Well, today's going to be a good episode. Tiffany's out on vacation and she will be missed. But in her place, I have decided to bring in my husband, Ryan. Hey, Ryan.
Hello.
Say hello to our listeners, our
Hello,
viewers.
everyone.
Yes.
Thank you for joining us.
And I thought that we would share a little bit of our personal story with the audience today and just kind of give you some back history of where we came from, where we're headed, what we're doing now, and answer a few questions. I know you guys have questions about us and the dynamic, so I thought we would answer those for you also today. So, first of all, thanks so much for doing this. I know it's not your favorite, but it's nice to have you on the show.
Yeah, it's nice to be here.
I kind of feel like the Kelly and her husband now are doing the show together after Ryan Seacrest left.
She can't keep a host.
No. Well, I mean, it's hard to be around a strong woman.
Really? I don't know anything about that.
Okay, so why don't you tell a little bit about our back history? Obviously, we've been married 20 years this year, which seems like a long time.
That's crazy.
I know.
20 years went by quick.
5 children, multiple companies.
Yeah.
And we've
lots of ups and downs.
We've had the blessing and also the curse of doing it together, basically doing life together. So maybe share with the audience a little bit about what that looks like with us having to do everything together.
Yeah, well, we met in the workplace. So it's like we never really had a perspective of what it was like to not work together. We met on the job and transitioned to doing the job together, and then transitioned to owning a company together. And so it's kind of always been a part of our relational DNA. It's a two-headed monster. On one side of the equation, I don't feel like there's anybody that I'm more powerful with than when I'm working with you and towards the same objective. And on the other side, it can be very challenging to know where work ends and where the relationship as husband and wife begins. And so from a 30,000 foot, not getting too granular, that's the broad takeaway is it's very powerful in the production capacity and its production capacity or capability. But, it can really wear on, and I don't need to tell you, you're a part of it. I feel like I'm telling you about it like you don't know, but,
you're telling our listeners.
Yes, it can wear on the relational side.
Yeah.
Because, how many times have the kids said to us, all you guys do is talk about business,
right? It's very hard to stop the conversation and know when, okay, let's put on our other hat.
Yeah.
Now we're married.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually even harder to all the chaos from work, because it's not like we had a nice little cupcake store. That was one thing we did. But we had so many other businesses that there's so many moving parts. And we oversaw different areas of the business, which kind of worked against us, in a lot of ways. So I think just the complexity of how many businesses and what roles we played in those, more times than none, probably pitted us against each other than for each other.
Well, yeah. And I think that's where the magic happens.
Right.
Because, we didn't always have the same perspective. We had the same goals,
right?
Hopefully.
Yeah.
But we didn't always have the same perspective on how to get there. And so, that to me is where really the rub is, right? It's like slamming gold against an anvil in order to shape it, or shaping a sword. And you have to slam this piece of metal against this hard surface in order to shape it and refine it. And so the magic happened in the refining, but refining's not fun. You're breaking off pieces, and you're changing one another's beliefs and positions, and that doesn't happen without some type of crushing occurring.
Right.
So, but then you come up with, what do you come up with? You come up with this beautiful creation that can only happen in the context of refinery. So, I think that's where it's like you can come home sometimes, and we would come home sometimes, and it's like, I don't know if I can look at him tonight, or I don't know if I can look at her tonight. And now we're supposed to play house. And that to me has always been the rub. I know that you would agree many times. It would have been nice just to come home and supper was ready. And how was your day, honey? And it's like, we know how each other's day were.
Exactly. And to come home to someone who doesn't know your world
to
the extent where you feel like you don't even need to mentally relate with that person about what happened that day. So yeah, there's definitely some pros and cons, but I think overall for me, I agree with you 100%. By the way, that's exactly how I feel. I think for me, when you think about how much time a couple spends at work and how actually we think it's, a blessing and a curse, but on the flip side, I think it would have been the same blessing and curse on the flip side had we not worked together, because it would be great if we didn't work together, but the curse would be that we really would not have had the luxury of spending as much time together and our kids being able to watch us do something together, which I think is a powerful combination. And we are yin and yang. I think I can speak for myself when I say my success has always come from the dynamic of you and I. Anything that I tend to try to go outside and do on my own, I can do it. But do I feel as powerful and successful? No. I think there's some magic that happens when we do things together. And I think that your skills, your strengths are my weaknesses and my strengths are yours when it comes to business. And so when we put that together, for the most part, I feel like we're pretty unstoppable in most arenas. Now we've had some everybody looks at us and thinks that we've always, like King Midas, everything we touch turns to gold because they never see the bad side. So maybe share a little bit about how we even ventured into the debt world, what that looked like, and why.
Yeah. And, just to kind of complete that thought, I feel like God put us together in the context of working together. And so for us, our journey and our truth was that it was born there. And it was a continuation of where our relationship was birthed. And, scripture calls a spouse a helpmate. That was literally the purpose of this spousal relationship, was a helpmate. And so at the most beautiful level, when we work together towards the same goal, it is truly a picture of what a helpmate looks like, because you sharpen me where I'm dull, and I'm able to sharpen you where you're dull. And that, I think, is where the blessing unfolds.
I agree.
So, I think that's the beautiful part about it. I've talked a little bit about the challenges, but then there's the beauty, and then the success comes. But to me, that's not even the beautiful part.
Right.
The beautiful part is that we are able to create something together in a way that pleases our Heavenly Father. And that's something to me that's the prized possession. So, it wasn't always coming up roses. That's for sure. When we first started working together, I mean, it was explosive. We went from doing okay in the mortgage business to, we felt like we were we were hitting it big, and the first time we started making money, and it was like, whoa, what's this? I was used to buying 25-cent milk on the day or that it expired or after, that's the way I lived my life. It was on a razor thin budget, and I loved it. I like being frugal like that.
Like it was like a challenge.
It was a challenge.
Right.
I mean, I would go to the grocery store and say, what are y'all about to throw away?
Or we'd go to restaurants and be so proud of the fact that we were going to fill out a survey and get reimbursed for our whole meal.
Yeah.
Everything was a challenge.
So once money started coming in the first time that we were working together and really were able to sharpen each other in the way we were, it was like, whoa, this is crazy and a lot of fun. But in 2008, when we had the real estate market crash, and both of us being in the mortgage sector, it was a hard and fast fall. It wasn't like, we got 6-9 months in order to kind of pre-plan what we're going to do here. It was one day we had 20 mortgages in the pipeline, and the
Yep.
next day it was 0.
It's literally like the lights went out.
The lights went out in Georgia. I
Yep.
mean, it was bad.
It was bad.
Yeah.
I remember that day, and I remember where we were sitting
Yeah.
when the phone call came from the bank and said, we're not closing
We're
this
done.
loan.
Yeah.
I was like, wow.
Yeah, we were, and you and me like, yeah, that's what they say, but we'll figure it out. Yeah, we'll figure it out. And we tried. We opened our own mortgage company, and we tried banging our heads against the wall.
We had one customer, and that customer now did our lawn. Remember?
Yeah.
He showed up, and he was our lawn
We're like,
person.
we recognize this guy.
I know.
So when we were doing the mortgages, and then when they shut off, and then we're trying to make it work. And thankfully we had savings, but we went through that after about 9 months. And I remember distinctly, sitting in our house, and at the time we had come up to having 5 rentals plus our primary in the good times, and so here we are in the bad times. All of the equity in the homes was now gone. The houses were upside down. I'm sure a lot of listeners remember this season. And you came in and you had that stack of bills, and you threw it down on the table and you said, what am I supposed to do with these? There's no money in the account. And I said, nothing. We don't pay them. That's what bankruptcy's for. And, I remember going through the bankruptcy process, and, as a husband and as the head of household, and, having the financial background I'd been a financial advisor. I'd opened the Edward Jones office on the island. I'd had a mantle for financial advisory my whole life. I mean, I opened my first IRA when I was 14. I used to be playing tennis with my buddies, like, you guys need to get an IRA open. They're like, what are you talking about? I'm 14, dude.
And we wonder where Connor gets
it was like, they literally like, just serve. So, that was my life. And so to get to this point now of financial destruction, and that was a low point. That was a low point for me. I really felt like a failure, that I hadn't done my job. And, it was hard, and then there was the walking out the bankruptcy, which was no walking the park either. But I think for me, the emotional and mental toil of the bankruptcy was much harder than the actual walking out and leveraging of the laws that were on the books for people that were broke.
Right.
That I was like, sweet, I'm excited this is here that we can leverage.
Absolutely.
So from a financial playbook, I was like, this is awesome. But what was happening inside of me was not awesome. I was beating myself up, and 5 kids.
Yeah.
Lost all our houses.
Well, it's crazy because that day I remember so distinctly. One, I remember we had just had Tristan, and I was pushing him in like the Mac Daddy of strollers because I didn't have anything less than that, right? And I remember standing in front of that bankruptcy attorney, and he almost kind of like, and not all creditors showed up, but of course ours did. And we were like one of the only couples standing there, and we had that stroller, and he just kind of looked, and then we were keeping some things out, and he looked at us and said, oh, I'm sure I'll see you guys here again. And that comment was all it took to kind of like put a fire inside of me that literally, and we talked about this on the way home. It's like, what a humiliating process.
Yeah.
It was that comment. It's almost like he found satisfaction in seeing people so down, which to me is so disturbing, but also what propelled us into. But I also remember getting in the car. Do you remember this? Getting in the car and you got a phone call. The one thing you kept out was the boat, and it was sinking as we were driving home.
I forgot it was that day.
The same day.
The boat was like on the bottom. Yeah, that was kind of like very symbolic of everything that was going on.
It really was.
Yeah, and I think Dad was over there trying to bail it out, and it was
the
one asset I was going to try to make some money on, yes. Hey, I can use the boat and fish, and and then it sunk. So that was kind of like, that was the whole season right there.
Yeah.
And leaving from there, I can remember not saying much at all. It was just like a gut punch, and bankruptcy is hard.
Yeah.
And it left a scar on us for a long time, the scarlet letter.
Right.
It was 10 to 12 years before we emerged out of that as even a capable borrower in the bank's eyes. I mean, we lived the next 10 to 12 years on cash.
Well, it's interesting
because we couldn't
because
borrow anything.
right, and I think for a lot of our listeners who are struggling with debt and they feel like, bankruptcy, that's the only thing they're thinking, and to
Mhm.
hear the emotional toil it has on you for years
Mhm.
after, I think that's what's so magical about what we were able to do with our own experience
Mm.
in shifting that dialogue for
Yeah.
people and presenting them another option.
Mhm.
So, why don't you share a little bit about what we did after we left
Yeah.
there?
Well, let's not forget the low point. I mean,
That was pretty
standing in
low.
the WIC line and, food stamps. I remember going to the grocery store and they give us so much milk and
Yes,
so
and
much peanut
you
butter and
had
so
to
much
tell
cereal.
you
We
had to
were
tell
giving it away to
I know,
friends.
you had to tell all our friends. I was
Yeah.
so embarrassed. We
Yeah.
were at the house and they were like, "Oh, I think we're
I
out
wasn't
of." Yeah,
embarrassed.
I know you weren't. And I think we're out of eggs. "Oh, well, we get it for free with WIC, so I'll bring some over." I'm just like, "Oh my
Well,
gosh."
I the reason I wasn't embarrassed is because I try my best to wear my truth on my sleeve. And sometimes that's the low and sometimes
Mhm.
it's the good. But in that time I knew there's a purpose this is happening.
Right.
And that's why it was really important to me to share with everyone who would listen what was going on. You're like, why do you have to start every conversation that we're going through a bankruptcy? I'm like, well, I mean, that isn't that what relationships are about? It's like, let's be transparent about
Mhm.
where we're at. Like, so what? Bad things happen. And it was in that season
Mhm.
that we got a messenger that brought
Mhm.
this idea about this weird product that could help people with credit card debt.
Right.
And we're like, if you remember, like the first couple times I wasn't hearing it. I'm like, I'm doing mortgages. I am doing mortgages.
Yeah, we do like one
There
every
was
2 or
no
3
mortgages
months.
happening.
Yeah.
And finally, you got me to listen, and we started learning about this product.
Mhm.
We went and did, some discovery, and ended up learning how to negotiate credit card debt.
Mhm.
And it's so interesting because nothing happens by accident. It's so interesting that we walked through what we walked through, and then out of nowhere, we didn't go looking
I know.
for credit mediation. We didn't go looking for that. It literally came to us. It
Right.
was brought to us. And then we had the ability to tell the story of this alternative to bankruptcy.
That's right.
And so, there is from that point on, it's just I can remember. You remember it in the beginning. We started blanketing cars at Walmart parking lots
With
with
flyers.
flyers saying we can help you with your credit card
Yeah.
debt. And the phone started ringing. We're
Mhm.
like, oh no, what do we do now?
Right.
This phone's ringing. What do we do with these people?
We're like putting people in and we didn't even know how to settle the first
Yeah,
debt,
yeah. I mean, it was definitely a on the job training,
which I think
and
we work well under pressure.
we
Like, that's the one thing about us. When our backs are against the wall, I
yeah.
know multiple people have called us the comeback kids
Mm,
because we really look at failure in the face and we don't take it. We're
yeah.
we're gonna we're gonna figure it out. So I
Mhm.
think that's where we kinda got that nickname, the
Yeah.
comeback kids.
I
But
think Ryan Young coined that nickname.
mm,
He actually gets the credit for that. Because he watched our peak, and then he watched our crash,
right.
and then he watched the rising out of the ashes. And yeah, I remember he was the first one to say, "You guys are the official comeback kids."
But,
And
I wanna
it's
go
really
back
cool.
though to something you said that's so
Mhm.
powerful, and it really taught me during that time the transparency that you had with people. I say that all the time to people, like, "Just ask for help. Just say
Mhm.
where you are."
Mhm.
Why do you think people are so hesitant to I know I was. But what is
Mhm.
it that's stopping people from asking for help or actually looking to see where they are financially? From
Mhm.
your experience in the financial world, why aren't people more vocal about that? And
Mhm.
why did it come so easy for you?
Guilt and shame. Guilt and shame.
Yeah.
Guilt and shame they're weapons, and they're weapons that are formed against us to destroy us. And unfortunately, guilt and shame is what's prevalent when you hit a financial wall. Obviously, it's in lots of areas of our life, but the great thing about saying no to guilt and shame is there's freedom on the other side of
Mhm.
transparency. So the reason I was so attracted to telling the truth about where we were was because I received freedom. So when I released it, I was free. And guilt and shame holds one captive.
Mhm.
So it's a form of bondage.
Yeah.
And because we feel like we're the only one in the world this has ever happened to,
Mhm.
I am my situation is much, much worse than anyone else that's ever lived.
Which is such a lie.
They're lies.
Yeah, I mean, you see all the people that went through our program. We had thousands of individuals that we were able to help get out of credit card debt. And every one of them thought they were the only one or that they were the most debt. I can remember the conversations like, well, before I tell you how much I have, just know, like, and it would be small compared to others. And it's like, look, everyone is in the same boat. I remember at one point, we probably had 30,000 people, and I could almost carbon copy their story one after the other.
Right, because it's not much difference.
That's right.
But remember, guilt and shame says you're a bad person. And transparency says I'm in a bad situation.
Yeah.
And that's the distinction that I think all of us, when we're going through tough times, need to remember, that it's not guilt and shame. It doesn't make us a bad person to go through a bad situation.
Right.
It just means that we're in a bad spot.
That's
and
right.
The good news is that we can emerge from that.
That's right. Yeah. And I think that just being able to watch how many people we've been able to help to date, which I'm excited because I want you to share a little bit about what you're doing and you've always done. I know we work well as a team. And so for us right now, I'm still in the debt world. I love debt. I love taking people where they are and getting them to where they want to be and out of their current situation because we've been there, we've lived through it. And we have such a great team behind us that's able to jump in and help. But I also love to see people thrive, right? And I think for some, they think, well, I could never start a company or I could never buy investment property or invest money in any way because I'm sitting over here with this debt. Like, what would you say to people like that? And what are you doing now to help families? I know there's been multiple people that you've looked at their overall financial picture and taken them from in the red to now thriving. So share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I feel like the position that I've always been placed in is in a position to help the underdog. I feel like that's where I've always been placed, and the debt business fed right into that. I actually remember a story at Edward Jones when I was a financial advisor, and my regional manager came to me. He said, Ryan, I've got good news and bad news. And I was like, okay. I was like, let's hear the good news. He said, well, the good news is you've opened more accounts, new accounts, than any other new financial advisor in the state of Florida. I'm like, sweet. I'm like, I'm doing my job then. And I said, well, what's the bad news? He says, the bad news is none of them have any money. So you're not going to make any money. And I said, but isn't that who needs us the most?
Totally.
Isn't that who needs to learn how to save the most is the people that don't have any money. And the issue was it wasn't profitable for the brokerage, which I understood. However, that was the death blow to my financial advisory career. I got very disenchanted, and I said, "This isn't what I signed up for." And so I've always been in a place to help people get started. And so my passion really is real estate. It always has been since I was young, driving around on Riverview Boulevard with my parents, looking at houses and watching them buy and sell houses, my whole life.
I don't think we've gone on a vacation without going to look at property.
I love looking at real estate.
Right.
It's my number one passion. So really where I'm at now at this stage of my life is recognizing that there's a way to marry my passion for real estate with helping people build wealth. And, the utilization of real estate as a wealth building tool is unparalleled. And it's interesting, a lot of the people that I've helped, especially, young married couples, they'll call on me and I'll sit with them and they'll say, we want to buy a house, but we know it's about 5 years away. And I'll look at their financial situation. I'm like, why is it 5 years away?
Right. And
they'll say, well, this, and this. And I'll say, well, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. I said, you guys can buy a house today. And some of those conversations that were had where they did not believe they could buy a house. And 10 years later now, they're sitting on a gold mine. And they have leveraged and implemented the tactics that I've shared with them. And, I would say that my biggest regret that I would go back and tell a 20 or 30-year-old individual is my biggest regret is ever selling a piece of real estate.
Mm-hmm.
I wish I had every piece of real estate I've ever owned.
Totally.
It would be very exciting. So the key isn't just to acquire real estate. It's also to find a way to control that real estate for the rest of your life.
Yep. And I love that because out of everything that we've done together, I can truly say the thing that I've actually, like when you look at all the nuts and bolts, real estate has been the best. And we still are involved in real estate, and you practice what you preach, and you do multifamily units, and you're investing across the country and actually in different countries now. And so I'm watching you do this, but also I'm watching the joy that it brings because you don't have the overhead of brick and mortar, employees, everything that comes with becoming wealthy as a business owner.
Yeah.
You're doing, but you're insulated from all of that.
Yeah.
So it really is a beautiful model. And I can say that from a place of being both in a business, running a business, which I love. But I, like you say, I think I like the daily minutia of like being around great people.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, in the grand scheme for most people, I think if they realize the power of just real estate.
Yeah. And I love teaching. You know, I think that's my number one
I totally
gift.
agree.
I love to teach.
Yep.
And so when I got my real estate license, I was like, what am I going to do with this?
Right.
You know, do I even want this? And and the truth was I got it because I loved real estate and I love teaching people. And what do I love teaching people? I love teaching people how to leverage real estate to build legacy wealth. And it's possible. And I think that's what most people don't realize is that it may not take as much as you think it does to buy your first piece of real estate.
That's right.
And then I would say to the triple digit millionaires that there are lots of cool ways to build your empire with new and different kinds of real estate strategies. Like you said, international holdings, farms, multifamily. There's a lot of exciting ways to be able to control more and more real estate because in my mind, that is the most powerful wealth building tool. Primarily because of one principle, and that's the principle of leverage.
Right. And I know that, you know, right now too, like it's nice to be able to speak to people who are in debt, but give them hope. And I think being able to say, look, you know, coming or reaching out to speak with me about their debt situation, I immediately want to connect them with you to, now that you're out, let's build wealth, right?
Yeah.
And if people want to reach out to you, maybe they're not in debt and they just want to talk with you about, you know, how do I get into the real estate game? Or can you look at my overall portfolio and tell me what should I be investing in and where? How would they do that?
The best way is to contact me via email. And I don't know if it'll be on the podcast or if I should just say it, but
yeah, you can just give your email, but we'll also link it.
Yeah, Ryan@jubileeorganics.org. That would probably be the best way. I love to talk about all things real estate and wealth planning. So it's definitely fun, and I can certainly help people to buy or sell real estate.
Yep.
So,
and I'm super excited because I know I've learned a lot, even just from you. You are a great teacher. I've learned a lot about saving. I've learned a lot about investing. I never used to do that before. I was living paycheck to paycheck when I met you. So I know I have learned so much in my own personal experience. And that's what I try to share with people in debt, that you don't have to be a financial planner to build wealth.
No.
And I think that what you're doing is you're stepping outside of the mold and taking your skill set in the finance world and delivering it to actually the people that need it the most. And so hopefully our listeners will hear that. I also am excited. I know you're working on a course too that you're going to provide for people sharing how to build wealth. And so we're going to do something together where I'm doing the course on how to get out of debt. You're going to have one on how to build wealth. And hopefully for those listeners who can't necessarily reach out and meet with us, they'll be able to download that and purchase it and be able to start building their own portfolio.
Yeah, I actually am going to be launching a YouTube channel.
Great.
And just sharing some of my travels.
Yeah.
Because I travel a lot looking at real estate and looking at different opportunities. And I'm going to start memorializing some of those trips, whether it be out west or in Mexico or in Central America, the Caribbean. There's opportunities all over the place. And if there's ever a time in our history in this country to diversify and, for wealthy individuals, I'm encouraging everyone to plant flags outside of this country. And for people that are just getting started, there are certain strategic places to start planting a flag within this country that will, I believe, yield the best results. So, yeah, I'm really excited, and it's awesome to be able to remember a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, no, it's great. I think that this will be something we continue. Hopefully, it's not just a one-time appearance that you're
Mhm.
making on our show. We can be blessed with your presence ever so often with giving us what's happening and what to look at to invest in.
Mhm.
And I know we didn't touch on everything in our story. I know you've got Jubilee and all these other projects
Yeah,
going on, but thank you so much for
you're welcome.
co-hosting with me today since
It
Tiffany's
was
out,
fun.
and we'll do it again soon.
All right,
All
thank you.
right, thanks.